From apps and email providers to store loyalty cards, these days, if you're not paying for a service, you may be paying with your data. The digital age created new options for consumers and new avenues for companies to learn about their customers. Now, artificial intelligence is making it easier to combine that data and use it to make decisions about prices, jobs, and access. State lawmakers are debating new laws that would set boundaries on how AI is used and to establish when automated personal data integration crosses the line. There's a vast range of possible applications, but this week we're focused on the price of groceries, hiring decisions, and the growing use of AI chatbots for companionship, especially among teens. This session, lawmakers are weighing a slate of bills dealing with artificial intelligence, consumer protection, and Washington's tech economy. Joining us are House Technology, Economic Development, and Veterans Committee Chair, Representative Cindy Ryu, and Ranking Republican Member, Representative Stephanie Barnard. Thank you both for your time today. I want to start out by asking about the surveillance pricing legislation. I want to start with you, Representative Ryu. This legislation would ban large grocery retail chains from using AI-enabled surveillance pricing. It would also pause the rollout of electronic shelf labels in stores larger than 15,000 square feet until 2030 to give the Department of Commerce a chance to look at the impacts on both the consumers and the workforce. So the term surveillance pricing refers to custom, individualized, AI-enabled, data-informed prices set just for you, and it's common online now. Shopping for a hotel, for example, the price could change depending on where you're shopping from, the zip code associated with your IP. What's your perspective on whether and how the state should regulate AI pricing in this sector?
Yes, I actually support House Bill 2481. It is fairness in grocery pricing and no surveillance or surge pricing. As you may remember, when toilet papers, which is not quite grocery, but as the supply and demand fluctuated, we saw huge increases in toilet paper prices. However, food, I think toilet paper you can buy and then stock up and so on, but food, we all need to go grocery shopping every week or so, and we all need to eat. And so I agree that we should not be paying more if just because of who we are or the data that they have on us. And so I believe in fairness, and it's absolutely an issue for the affordability of food available that should be available for everyone at a fair, same price, not based on who I am or not based on who you are.
What's your perspective on that legislation?
It's, you know, I really do understand the points that Chair Ryu is making. I also care deeply about affordability. But one of my questions, I think one of the biggest questions that was brought up in the hearing was, you know, this is a way, using this new technology is a way that we can drop pricing because, you know, it's not as much work to put on to use those digital labels rather than a paper label, which would be required if we were to ban that technology. And those that use, the stores that do use that type of technology, they don't always use the, they don't gouge. It's just simply to help them do a better job more effectively and be more efficient in their pricing. So I don't deny that there probably is some price gouging going on, but we shouldn't you know, penalize those that are using it properly or not doing that at all. In fact, it does help, and I think in the hearing, even Rep. Ryu brought up this example, which I thought was wonderful. Well, at the end of the day, maybe you have sushi at the end of the day and you want to take off a couple of dollars off the price just to get it off the shelves. And that's typically something that grocers do regularly with bread or, you know, day-old bagels or whatever the case may be. And when you're talking about affordability, if I walk by day-old donuts, you know, I'll buy them cheap all day long. But you can't really do that if this goes into effect. So that those loyalty programs, some of the other things that you see, some of those benefits that stores want to really help to engage their customers and bring more customers in for more deals, those would all go by the wayside. So it is about affordability. I think there's just two sides to that coin.
So are you concerned, too, about, for example, if I shop at Safeway, use a Safeway card at a Chevron and get 20 cents off per gallon of gas, that could go away? Is that something that, is there a way to protect that while also regulating this other part of it?
I absolutely think so. And actually, even the electronic labels, I think as long as there are rules that everyone can agree to, that it will be not based on who I am, but rather, and surveillance pricing, if it is used judiciously, in my opinion, and the example I gave was, the question I gave was, banchan is the Korean side dishes that go on sale at a regular time. However, I have that discount and you have a discount. So if it applies to everyone, I have no problem with the discounts that are offered, or if the prices on toilet paper, again, has to go up for everyone, I see why that needs to be done based on supply and demand. And so if the electronic labels can be used in that way to reduce costs to the grocery stores, I can see it. However, if it changes just based on who's walking by, I don't see that as being fair. And yep, I love using my Safeway card and getting that discount. And when I can, getting a discount on my gas, I think it's two separate issues altogether.
And I want to ask you a follow-up, then I want to come back to you on this. The experience of shopping online for a hotel, say from San Francisco versus Phoenix, and you know, the hotel, there have been some studies, there have been some reports, you might wind up paying hundreds of dollars more per night because the vendors think that you can pay that. Do you think, I mean, is that's been built into the online economy for so long, is that the concern, that could come to stores?
Exactly. Hotels, which I do shop a lot for hotel, and then, you know, based on the criteria you put in, is it 3 stars, 4 stars, breakfast included, not, and so on. In a way, it's been happening, and we really don't have that transparency to see how they're pricing it. I assume it's based on consumer choice. Hey, do I really want that particular hotel? Am I willing to go a little bit further out for a better price? That's, in my opinion, kind of an optional activity, and I have choices on whether I use a particular website or not, or go directly to the hotel, versus groceries. Groceries are, number one, needed. We all need to eat. Number two, there are many of us who are constrained by how far away different grocery stores are. And so especially when we are starting to have a lot of food desert of not being able to shop locally and having to drive further or ride further or walk further to get that gallon of milk or whatever else you need, I think it is really incumbent on us to make sure that we protect our Washingtonians.
And so, to your point, is this, as we've seen some store chains moving away from having almost any employees at all, to, you know, you have to have your smart device enabled to shop there, the shelf knows, the cameras know how it works, and then, you know, you can leave when you want.
I'm just talking about the shelf labeling systems here that would be banned, those digital shelf labeling systems, if they included software that captured data and set a price according to the data that they had. So we have to remember that while we don't want that in many ways, we're already living it through the airlines, through other things that you mentioned. But in our stores, I don't think it's being used that way. I don't know, but it's worthy of looking into. I think potentially commerce could be a study. And I know people, a study, they don't want to hear another study, but how often is that really happening in the state of Washington? And who is using these shelf labeling systems and actually changing the price for different customers that walk in and out, depending on who they are or what their, how they're labeled. So that's a big concern. And one of the things that's already happening at the federal level, as you know, is that they are already taking some precautions and looking into legislation for trying to put some guardrails around some of the pricing and gouging that goes on across the country. So I want to see what happens there. I think this while this bill is very, very well intended, it's not ready for prime time. We still have a lot of work to do on this. There's some things we need to find out and make sure that we don't hamper our grocery stores, our grocers and their employees. We want to keep those. And the jobs, I understand, but I also feel like we have the dynamic economy, which, you're going to lose some jobs and you're going to gain some over here. So we might lose some employees potentially, but that is just naturally occurring in this day and age and in the age of new technology where those jobs might be different, but they'll still be there. They just might be somewhere else.
And I wanted to ask more of a technical question about this. I know it's not your bill, it's not your bill, but can you help me understand the 15,000 square foot threshold? Is that to sort of exempt stores that are already using the electronic shelf labels currently for different purposes, perhaps?
I think it's being amended as of today, so we'll see where we land. But I think the overall tenet of the bill is that we make it simple, we make it fair, and we make it as transparent as possible. And you talked about needing to use electronic gadgets in order to shop. Well, we were just at a restaurant, and of course, everyone has that QR code. So my 31-year-old son, he's whipping out his phone and looking it up. Well, my 73-year-old husband, he's asking for the paper menu, right? And so I think we need to lower the barrier, absolutely, and make it as efficient as possible to basically make the businesses as efficient as possible, because we've had automation as well as, of course, technology helping them become more efficient. So I absolutely agree. We have to stay with the times. However, from the consumer point of view, that fairness, the transparency, and simple approach, I think, is what what I'm hearing from the proponents of this bill.
I'd like to transition to talk about regulating high-risk systems. This is, you sponsored this legislation in the House, House Bill 2157, which would regulate those systems and require safeguards against algorithmic discrimination. What kinds of AI systems does that bill target, and are we talking about insurance? Are we talking about warranties? I mean, what do you envision as possible outcomes if there aren't some guardrails?
Absolutely. So this is a bill that is based on a Virginia bill that was worked well over the last year. Unfortunately, they did not implement it, and so I took the idea from tech companies, actually, that had looked at California models, the Colorado models, and other states' models. And the Virginia one, they were most interested in because not having any AI regulation is not an option for me. AI is here. It's been around for 70 years. It's just that it's gotten so much more powerful and so much faster. And by the time we have Q-Day, quantum computing coming someday sooner rather than later, we will absolutely have to address this now instead of waiting until when it's even faster and more powerful. And so the whole tenet of this bill is that when there are high-risk critical decisions being made by AI, we need to know that it is that's the decision that the business is using AI to make those decisions. But on the other side, it also has to make sure that the businesses are not using bias as an integral part of the decision making. Our typical based on our ethnicity, race, even age. Is that system using AI, number one? And if it is, then is it discriminating based on our usual way of thinking of what we've been working on, anti-discrimination laws all these years, but now specifically about using AI. So for instance, it would be hiring. Everybody knows about when you submit a resume, it used to be people read them. They don't anymore. Many companies use AI to screen them, and based on if you even disclose how old you are you basically out of even being considered, right? So on the hiring decisions, absolutely, I think this is very critical and timely as people try to get new jobs, especially if they've been freshly laid off, which has been happening. And access to healthcare, insurance, and other critical information, critical decisions that we all depend on.
What's your perspective on that?
Wow. First of all, I think that regulating AI that's not an easy task. First of all, it's new to us. Not a lot of people understand it, what it does, what it doesn't do. And how do you regulate that? Do we wait for the feds to come along and give us direction and wait for them to pass what they're going to do to regulate this, or do we wait? We don't want to stifle innovation. We have to be really, really careful, especially in Washington State. We're known worldwide for our innovation here in Washington. We have leaders, some of the biggest leaders in the world of AI innovation. We don't want to stifle that, but at the same time, we do need to safeguard the public. We don't want innovation, or we don't want their privacy to be, we want to protect privacy to a certain degree, and we also want to protect intellectual property. So there are some protections that we need to consider. But really, we want to, I think, just recognize that technology is here, and that we do have a responsibility to look and see what's happening and try to. I think it's really easy for us to have a knee-jerk reaction. Regulate. So we just want to jump in and we want to fix it. And I get that. I understand that, especially when kids' lives are being affected, and they're being these certain algorithms that they get on, and there is a large concern for the mental health of our children. That to me is top priority. So bills like chatbots that create relationships that are human-like or that are romantic, and they're not even real. I mean, that is really concerning. Or if someone is struggling with their mental health and they are considering taking their own life, and the potential of a chatbot to get involved in that conversation, we have to really look at that and take steps. But while we're doing that, we do need to be careful that the businesses and companies that are trying to get their feet on the ground and innovate, they aren't we shouldn't cut them off at the knees, but help those businesses to grow and to flourish, and not over-regulate when it doesn't really apply to them. So we need to write the legislation in a way, like I said, it doesn't stifle innovation, it protects the public, and it takes into consideration that technology changes too. And sometimes, and I can name a bill now, it's 1170, it really isn't even relevant anymore, because 1170 is where you can take an AI image and you have to put a little like icon on that image to say this was AI generated. Well, guess what? Technology is beyond that bill already. It already makes the bill obsolete, in that there's ways that you can just take that little icon off the image, so it won't do anything. And so we have to remember that it's constantly changing, and it doesn't really go at the speed of government. It goes a lot faster than that. So we have to make sure that we're not creating and working really hard on passing legislation that's already obsolete.
So we've got a little under 3 minutes left here. I do want to follow up with you on the AI notice. I was going to ask about the AI notice disclosure legislation, but it sounds like practical concerns jump to mind. Is that the, how do you implement that? Is that one of the biggest questions?
Well, that's a great question, but it takes time to develop that. Again, I feel like we are putting the cart before the horse, and it's very, very easy to see really sad circumstances that are happening in different places around the world with AI, and so you want a knee-jerk reaction, but because you want to just solve the problem quickly. But there are a lot of there's a lot of things that we need to consider, which some of the things I've gone over, and I feel like we need to take a little bit of a step back, take a deep breath, so that we get it right.
And so now we are basically to our closing thoughts part of this. When you think about artificial intelligence, what's happening, and then your role, your ability to do something about it, how would you sum up what you see as your duty related to AI?
Absolutely. This is my 16th year in the House of Representatives. And as a former insurance agent, as well as a business owner, I think AI is wonderful if used correctly. And so we talked about House Bill 2157 on high-risk decisions. And I think the bottom line is that technology should make our life better, easier, and more fair, and not magnify any discrimination that's going on right now already. And so I think our efforts as state legislators should be that we take care of our people, our Washingtonians. And I have opposed federal, preemption of any regulations at the state level, because I'm not going to hold my breath for the feds to act and give us the guidelines or even regulations so that AI is used responsibly.
And then same question from your perspective, for your constituents, what do you see as your duty related to these topics?
I want to protect my constituents from any harm that isn't unintended consequence of any legislation that we passed too hastily. I want to also address the dangers that are out there with AI. I don't want our children to be harmed in any way, and if that means regulating, then let's do it. But again, we have to connect with our community. We have to connect with our constituents and really ask them, how is this affecting you in your life? How have you been harmed or helped? And what are you experiencing that has been positive or negative? And do a lot of that legwork rather than just thinking we know what's best for them. I know that as a legislator, I understand AI, not as much as I should, and that goes for quantum as well. We're facing this new technology, and my children know much more about AI than I do, and quantum for that matter. But they're the ones to ask. We need to ask them what they're experiencing, what's harming them, what's helping them, and then really have an honest conversation with each other. And that's where the politics, I wish, would go away. And let's just focus on what we can do that will help everyone in the state of Washington to benefit from AI and quantum technologies rather than being harmed.
And we'll have to leave it there. Thank you very much, Representative Barnard, Representative Ryu. We appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Still ahead, it's one of the hottest topics of the session. And now we're getting our first official look at the bill. Democratic majority leaders rolled out their plan for a state income tax on households bringing in more than $1 million a year. That's next.
The future of space exploration.
I think there's a lot of opportunity that we don't even know exists.
On February 3rd, House and Senate Democrats rolled out the bill behind the much-hyped income tax for millionaire households. Senate Bill 6346 and House Bill 2724 would tax households that net more than $1 million a year at 9.9%. It would also apply to qualifying pro athletes who would pay a portion of their earnings from games in Washington. Sponsors say the tax is projected to raise more than $3.5 billion per year for education and services, while funding public defense and cutting sales taxes on hygiene products, as well as offering some tax relief for low-income households and small businesses.
We have a broken, upside-down tax system that we have been stuck with for 90 years. We have a generational opportunity in front of us to change that trajectory.
The new tax is part of Governor Bob Ferguson's legislative agenda for the year. But the governor says he won't support the current version of the bill. He wants to see more of the revenue devoted to offsetting other taxes.
I think we are able to craft this proposal in a way that allows us to make a much more significant investment back into the pocketbooks of Washingtonians, small business owners.
Republican leaders in the House and Senate condemned the proposed tax and predict it will inevitably be expanded to most taxpayers in Washington. Democratic sponsors say there is no support for a broader income tax. Republicans point to the initiative to prohibit state or local income taxes that lawmakers passed in 2024 as grounds for skepticism.
I mean, the voters have spoken multiple times, as has the court. And, the other side likes to dismiss court rulings that are nearly, 80, 90 years ago and say that's not relevant today. Well, the voters have also spoken a number of times. And to enact an income tax in the state, I think just flies in the face of the will of the voters.
Thanks for watching. We're out of time. Join us next week for more in-depth interviews you won't find anywhere else. Goodbye.